Time to take a look now at the International Press Review, and Allison Sargent is back on set. Allison, we're starting in Italy, of course, our top story of the day, with reactions to the elections that have plunged the country into political uncertainty.
That's right, Shona. I wanted to start with the front page that I think sums up the situation pretty well. This is the paper Il Tempo from Rome. They say, "Che bordello, what a mess." And you can see in this front page photo, they have the femin activist who interrupted Berlusconi as he was voting yesterday. We'll actually see her again in a moment. She made it onto quite a few of the front pages. Now, they say no party has the majority needed to form a government, but the populist five-star movement and the far-right La Liga, well, they both won big, and now the paper is saying, you know, we told you so. One paper, though, that doesn't seem quite as distressed as the others today, it must be said, is Il Fatto Quotidiano. They're seen as a paper that's much closer to the five-star movement. They say on their front page today, everything changes, and we see there on the left the five-star movement's young leader, Luigi Di Maio, looking pretty self-satisfied, and he's sort of chasing Democratic Party leader Matteo Renzi off the stage.
Former Prime Minister Renzi is taking a bit of a beating in the Italian press today.
That's right. One Italian tabloid has done some photoshopping on their front page, actually, and we'll see that same femin activist. But now, instead of Berlusconi, she's telling Renzi, your time is up. That gesture there that she's making actually becomes kind of celebratory in this photo. The paper's saying, what a bang for La Liga and the five-star movement. And meanwhile, they're talking about the Democratic Party and the left have crumbled. Left-wing paper Repubblica, though, says that they can smell Renzi's resignation as the head of the party.
For one paper, though, the real loser is not Renzi himself as a man, but more his electoral reform push that obviously did not work very well.
Right, because this electoral reform was supposed to prevent the surge of the populist five-star movement. Center-left paper Corriere della Sera says it is obviously backfired. They say that Europeans now are very scared of the idea of seeing the five-star movement in power. The party had been very anti-EU and actually called for a referendum on abandoning the euro. Even though they made a big U-turn in recent months and took that back and sort of embraced the EU, well, the paper says that's only partially reassuring. No one, of course, is more anxious about the situation than Italians themselves. And I pulled out this cartoon from the cartoonist Vaudo. You can see I think that's what he's depicting himself, and he's putting a gun to his head. And he says it's because he's run out of medication to calm his stomach and seems to have decided that this is the only way out.
Maalox, indeed. Now, Italians may be squirming in uncertainty, but Germans are on their way back to stability after several months of not having a government.
Right. The Social Democrats gave their final seal of approval to this coalition deal with Angela Merkel's CDU. It ensures the chancellor her fourth term in power. You can see her there on the front page of Der Tagesspiegel. It's not a particularly triumphant photo, though. You can see her looking rather isolated. She had to make quite a lot of concessions to the SPD to secure this coalition, including giving them the finance ministry. And you can see Merkel looking somewhat more triumphant, I guess you could say, in this cartoon from the same paper, because she secured her GroKo, her grand coalition. But as you can see, she's looking quite a bit worse for the wear. And if you take a look at her hat, actually, you can see it's maybe the SPD who is really in charge.
That's right. She even has a black eye.
Yeah.
And a tooth missing. Finally, Allison, we ended with the Oscars. And I have two words for you. Inclusion rider.
Right, and those words, Shona, are actually the words that Frances McDormand used to conclude her Oscar acceptance speech for Best Female Actress. If you're confused about these words, you're not alone. The Guardian comes to the rescue with this article explaining what that means. An inclusion rider is a clause, actually, that an actor can have inserted into their contract that requires the cast and crew of the film to meet a certain level of diversity. It sounds like it should be the name of a superhero, but it's not.
Yeah.
The phrase comes from a TED Talk by a professor named Stacy Smith. She said she was elated that Frances McDormand gave her a shout out in this speech, and she's hoping to get a lot of calls from agencies now who are interested in actually using inclusion riders in contracts.
Well, despite the increased awareness of gender and racial inequality in Hollywood, and this over the last few years, a few papers are calling out on one of the award winners who say who they say slipped through the cracks.
Right, this is Gary Oldman, who won Best Actor for his portrayal of Winston Churchill. He's actually been accused of domestic violence. Now, these accusations date back to 2001. They had already been reported, so they're nothing new. Vox notes that in the age of Me Too, it's really quite interesting that they got overlooked. And the site brings them up not necessarily as a call for punishment of Gary Oldman, but more as a demonstration of just how hard it is in Hollywood to find a man who, as they say, has not been accused of, quote, doing terrible things to women. Last year's Best Actor winner, Casey Affleck, you might remember, he did not actually present this year's Best Actress award, as is usually the custom, and that's because it came out that he was sued twice for sexual harassment. Vox says it was a minor controversy when he won last year, but it actually grew into a much larger one, and the site is wondering if the same might happen with Gary Oldman.
I would argue, though, that there is a debate in the art world, in many different kinds of art, about the difference between the individual and their
work
work
they create. But then do we need to honor it in such a glamorous, glorious way is the other question.
I mean, it's a debate. And absolutely, there are definitely many sides to it. Thank you so much, Allison Sargent there with the International Press Review, as well as Yuka Royer earlier with the business. Thank you so much for watching us here at France 24.